following yesterday's budget, business leaders have largely welcomed the continuation of support schemes to help them through the pandemic. But how does it affect families across the country?
Well, who better to analyse the budget than Martin Lewis? And Martin, you are going to be talking to the Chancellor yourself later on. So let's have a look at what you think about it. Without your conversation with the Chancellor having happened yet, let's have a look at whether you think he's done enough, where you think he's been positive, where you think there are gaps. He has frozen, hasn't he, income tax thresholds. Now, lots of people saying that effectively translates as increasing tax for people. But actually, in the manifesto, the Conservative Party said that they would not increase income tax. It was one of the lockdowns. So has he done it by stealth?
No, I would say that's unfair. I mean, if you were listening to the budget yesterday, he was very clear that by freezing the thresholds would increase the tax burden, and he called it people having to pay their share of the government debt. So I think categorising it as a stealth rise is certainly unfair. But it is, in practice, a rise in the amount of income tax people will pay from the years 2022 to 2026. So what happens is this. Currently, you can earn 12.5 grand a year tax-free. Once you earn above that, anything you earn above that is 20% until you hit around £50,000, when everything above that is 40%. Those thresholds are going to go up for next year, but after that point, they're frozen, which means here's the threshold, and as average earnings tend to rise each year, more and more people will move above the threshold, meaning they will pay a higher proportion of their income in tax because the thresholds haven't gone up in line as they normally do. So yeah, it is a rise. It's quite a clever one because people won't notice it that much, and he's able to say things like, we're not changing the amount of tax people pay now on their current income. No. But of course, with inflation and average earning rises being predicted, this is actually what's known as fiscal drag, because it drags the money in without doing very much. And it's going to be billions of pounds that one raises for the Exchequer, but in a way that I'm not sure people will necessarily consciously feel in their pockets.
OK, what about the self-employed? It seemed like there was some good news for those. Some grants have been extended to more people, although, and we have talked about this a few times on the programme, and it's been a campaign that they're desperately trying to get more attention on, the excluded, the forgotten, those 3 million people that seemingly haven't been able to get any support from the government.
Well, as you'll know, Ben, I've been one of the main voices behind supporting the Excluded campaign. They've won a brilliant campaign. And since way back in last March, I've been writing about the gaps, the cracks, the crevices in the system. It was fantastic of the Chancellor to help so many people initially with furlough and self-employment support, but so many people have been left out, and that shouldn't be happening a year later. I don't want to do too much on that now because I will be talking to the Chancellor about it later. I've got some questions for him, and let's be honest, his people are probably watching, and I don't want to give him absolute notice of what that is. By the way, 8:30 tonight on ITV, that's the big interview, me sitting down with the Chancellor. Rishi meets Martin, Martin meets Rishi, whatever you want to talk about. But let's talk about what actually we know has changed. So this is one of those issues I've been campaigning for, which is there's an issue called New Starter Self-Employed. Until right now, to get the self-employment income support grant, you have had to have filed at least a 2018-19 tax return. And in practice, that meant roughly anyone who started a business or went self-employed since October 2018 has been out of this. Well, now they're going to include the 2019-20 tax returns. And so that means many of those people who had new started businesses may now be able to get some support. They'll get the 4th self-employment grant, which you're going to be able to apply for from the end of April. There's also going to be a 5th self-employment grant. That was announced yesterday too. That's going to come later in the year. Far less details on that. And for the first time, there'll be differential amounts in that. What do I mean? Well, all the other grants, it's either you qualify, in which case you get 80% of your monthly average up to £2,500, or you don't. In the 5th grant, hopefully the last grant, not because I don't want people to get money, but I hope we'll be out of all this. In the 5th grant, if your turnover's dropped by more than 30%, you'll still get the 80% of your income up to 2.5 grand. If it's dropped by less than 30%, you'll only get 30% of your income up to 2.5 grand. If it hasn't dropped at all, you won't get anything.
OK. Talking about we hope it's all going to be over, the Chancellor announced that the furlough scheme is going to be extended. Fantastic news, important support. It's going to be extended until September. Now, a lot of people thought, well, hang on a moment, I thought this was all going to be over on June the 21st. So what does that mean for people working?
Well, interestingly, I've always said when people ask me how long this would last, follow the finance. You know, because when we're told something lasts a month but financial support is in place for 3 months, then you've actually got an idea.
Yes.
The money people, we always tend to know, if you know what I mean. I think there is a subtle difference in the messaging here. What they're saying is we are going to hopefully open Britain back up so people have freedom to do what they want from around July. But clearly, things don't bounce back immediately, and many businesses will take time to come back into operation. So giving them the option to have furlough on board until later in the autumn actually is important, and I think is a sensible move there by the Chancellor. Let's remember, furlough is very different to the original beast now. Furlough is flexible, so you can be on furlough for part of the week and working for the rest of the week. That's perfectly legitimate and allowed. Your employer just has to pay you for the rest of the week. It is worth noting that from July, employers will have to start paying something towards furlough costs, 10% of salaries on top of the national insurance and pensions they do now, 20% in August and September. And let's be plain about this. That's when we'll start to see unemployment tick up again. Because if you as an employer have had somebody on furlough and you've had them there not knowing if you'll definitely need them once things come back to normal, and suddenly you have to start paying 10 or 20%, which is a big hit, well, that's going to crystallise the decision of whether you want that staff member still on your books. And if you don't, employers who are struggling, because if you're furloughing people, you've been closed for a while, they're likely to start getting rid of people then. So I think that's the time we'll start to see the uptick in unemployment figures, and I'm afraid there'll be people out there who lose their work at that time. None of this is good news for anyone, not the Chancellor, but the entire big picture situation.
Yeah.
What you can't see, because you're not in the studio with us, is our eyes, which you usually see at this point, where you know that we're running out of time, but we've still got lots we want to try and get through. Just quickly, before we let you go, and you know you've got a busy day ahead in preparation before you do chat with the Chancellor later, just news about the extension for the homeowners, the good news for them about the stamp duty extension, that threshold change, and also that £20 uplift in universal credit is going to remain, which again is going to be crucial, isn't it, for those on the lowest incomes?
So stamp duty, yeah, we had a cliff edge on the end of March, which meant people were desperate to do a completion on their mortgages, otherwise they wouldn't have got stamp duty. It was right to extend that because of the delays. Whether getting rid of stamp duty has actually helped people with the increase in house prices, something else I may mention to the Chancellor when I'm talking to him today. But yeah, for the immediate problem has been solved there. £20 uplift on universal credit stays until October. Another thing that wasn't mentioned in the budget but's useful, there's a thing called the minimum income floor on universal credit for the self-employed. Oversimplifying, it works like this. If you're self-employed, they normally assume you're earning at least minimum wage on a 35-hour working week when they calculate universal credit, even if you earn less. At the moment, they've got rid of that. So if you earn less, you actually get the right level of universal credit for what you're earning. The removal of that floor has been extended till August, and after August it will be done on a case-by-case basis. So the self-employed on universal credit who are on very low incomes will continue to get what they're getting now, and that's good. Lots more coming at 8:30 tonight. Did I mention I'm interviewing the Chancellor? And it's 8:30 tonight on ITV.
Well,
big interview. I've got quite a lot to put to, including real people's questions.